أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعن الله الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Respected elders, brothers, sisters, my condolences to you on the occasion that we are commemorating. Tonight is the night of the 9th of Muhurram. Tomorrow is known as the day of Tasu'ah. And the day of Tasu'ah is a day which the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam would be seen as grieving and mourning on account of the musibah that afflicted those who were encamped in Karbala. It was on the 9th when the reinforcement armies had arrived from Sham, and it became clear that they would be outnumbering Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his companions. And Umar ibn Sa'd and those with Umar ibn Sa'd became happy and confident of their victory the next day. Brothers and sisters, our topic is regarding the great deceivers and the ayah that Imam Hussein alayhi salam had recited on the day of Ashura when he's facing the enemy army is the ayah from the Quran, Inna wa'adallahi haqq fala taghurrannakum wal hayatud dunya wa la yaghurrannakum billahi al-gharur. Indeed, the promise of Allah is true. It is the truth. But do not let yourself be deceived by the worldly life, and do not let yourself be deceived by the great deceiver. We've been looking at different techniques that Iblis makes use of in order to trick and play with human beings, to have them arrive in the state of great deception where they are harming themselves. Like a mirage where somebody goes to, and in the process of going to it, they get rid of all the water that they have. Tonight I want to talk about one of the other techniques of the shaitan, which is known as tamnih, or in other words in the Quran, it's referred to as amal, or in other words, it is tamanni, meaning that one of the techniques of shaitan is to create false hopes by making use of one's desires. Now, in order to illustrate this and to set the tone, I want to narrate an incident which took place many days before Ashura. This was at the beginning of Imam Hussein alayhi salam's journey. When he is in Medina, one of the people who comes to him and tries to maybe convince him not to do what he's doing is none other than Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas was the cousin of the Prophet, and he was a student of the Prophet. He was a student of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And here he is going to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He's an older person. He's elder to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and he's trying to convince him not to go and proceed in the path that he is taking. And this is one of those incidents which isn't talked about that much, but it's a very interesting and very insightful incident. So what happens is that when Ibn Abbas comes to Imam Hussein, he tells him that, "Oh Hussein," I'm paraphrasing, he says that, "Do you really want to be Shaheed al-Taf?" It seems like Ibn Abbas knew the prediction. He knew that there would be a Shaheed from the family of the Prophet, and that Shaheed would become Shaheed in the land of Karbala. But he's saying to Imam Hussein that, do you really want to be that person? Because that will mean the end of your life in this world. Imam Hussein alayhi salam responds to him and he says that, "Oh Ibn Abbas, right, what do I have to do with this dunya? After all, we are all going to separate from it, and our time in it is something which is transient." And then he tells Ibn Abbas, "Would you like me to share with you a story about my father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salam?" Now, even though Ibn Abbas is elder to him, in this case he realizes that Imam Hussein alayhi salam is going to be his teacher. So he says to Imam Hussein, "Definitely, I would love to hear something from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam." So this is a story that's being told at the beginning of the journey, when Imam Hussein is about to set out towards eventually Makkah and then Karbala. It's very important. It's key to understanding what is the whole message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and how is he trying to teach people not to be deceived by the great deceivers. So the story that Imam Hussein alayhi salam narrates at that time, he says that once my father was working in the fields of Fadak. We know that Fadak was the property of Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam, given to her by our Prophet, and Imam Ali alayhi salam was in charge of taking care of it. He says that one time my father was working in the farms and the fields of Fadak, and he had a pick in his hand to work at the farming, and suddenly he sees that a beautiful woman is approaching him, the likes of which was completely stunning. This is what the hadith narrates. And when the woman comes near to him, she addresses Imam Ali alayhi salam, and she says to him that, "Will you take me in marriage? And if you do so, then you will no longer need to use this pick and to haw at the earth. In fact, I will give you treasures such that you will live a rich and luxurious life, you and your descendants after you. Not only that, I will give you a type of power and kingship such that you will reign over the earth." Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam responds to this foreign lady, and he says to her, "Tell me, what is your name?" And she says that, "Ana dunya, I am the dunya. I am the world," of course, the world in its despicable form, the world in its form which takes somebody away from Allah. Imam Ali alayhi salam, at that point, when this lady has introduced herself, he says to her that, "Go and try to deceive someone other than me. I have no need of you." And without looking at her even once more, he takes back up his tool, his farming tool, and he goes back to farming. Now at that point, please say salawat. One more salawat. At that point, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he recites some poetry capturing this occasion, and it's a very insightful poetry. He says, لَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ غَرَّتْهُ دُنْيَا دَنِيَّةً. Indeed, whoever was deceived by the lowly world has truly been deceived.
وَمَا هِيَ أَنْ غَرَّتْ قُرُونًا بِطَائِلٍ. And it is nothing but it has deceived generations after generations. أَتَتْنَا عَلَى زَيِّ الْعَزِيزِ بُثَيْنَةً. It came to us in a very beautiful representation. وَزِينَتُهَا فِي مِثْلِ تِلْكَ الشَّمَائِلِ. Meaning that its beauty was with these types of characteristics. فَقُلْتُ لَهَا غُرِّي سِوَايَ فَإِنَّنِي. I told it, go and deceive someone else. فَإِنِّي عَزُوفٌ عَنِ الدُّنْيَا وَلَسْتُ بِجَاهِلِ. Meaning that I am averse to the dunya and I will not be ignorant. وَمَا أَنَا وَالدُّنْيَا فَإِنَّ مُحَمَّدًا أَحَلَّ صَرِيعًا بَيْنَ تِلْكَ الْجَنَادِلِ. He says that why would I be wanting to hunger for the dunya while Rasulullah is beneath the earth? Meaning that what? Meaning that if the dunya was something that was so important that somebody should give up everything for, then why would it be that the best of creation would have been here temporarily? Imam Ali alayhi salam was tested at that time, and in the form of this type of vision. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam is narrating that at the beginning of the journey as a lesson for Ibn Abbas and for all those who would come afterwards. That Imam Hussein alayhi salam's secret to his success is his disattachment from that dunya which pulls somebody down. Brothers and sisters, the concept of amal and raja and hope in Islam is something which is deep and complex. But to simplify it, we know that hope in general is something which is very positive, very good. Hope is what propels us to, continue working at what we do. They say that one time Nabi Isa alayhi salam, he saw a farmer tilling the field, and he makes a dua. He says, "Oh Allah, take away hope from his heart. I want to see what happens when a human being doesn't have hope." And the farmer immediately puts down, his farming tools. He just lays down on the ground and doesn't work at all. Then Nabi Isa alayhi salam says, "Oh Allah, restore that hope in his heart." Once more, he picks it up and he goes at tilling at the ground. And he goes to that man. He says that what happened? He says that for that moment, I felt that hope disappear from me. I didn't know that I would see any fruits of my efforts, and I lost the motivation to continue going. But then it was restored to me. Hope is very important. But one of the techniques of shaitan is to use false promises and threats combined with drawn out hopes in order to deceive somebody. I'll give you an example. Sometimes the shaitan might come and say to somebody that, okay, go ahead and compromise in this work situation that you have. We know that there are red lines that we can't cross when it comes to seeking rizq from Allah. We have to keep our income clean. We have to go about seeking that income in a pure way. But shaitan will come and trick somebody and say that, okay, bend the rules here. It's perfectly fine, right? You can make it up at a later time. Just make your money, and eventually you'll figure out something to do. You can do tawbah and you can find another job, but for now this is what you have, so stick with it even if you have to bend your principles. That's step number one. And then when somebody gets drawn into the process of making money and they start to feel what it's like to be wealthy, then shaitan will come and activate what's called the long hope. In hadith and Quran, it's referred to as the long and drawn out hope. What is the long and drawn out hope? It's that illusion that we can achieve what our heart desires from the offerings of the materialistic and worldly life. So shaitan will come and say that your happiness lies in making as much money as possible and achieving objective after objective in climbing the corporate ladder. Just go about pursuing that, and then you'll see that's where happiness is. Yes, you're bending the rules. Yes, your income might be not so clean, but after all, don't you want to be happy? So that person is working towards a goal. And they keep on working and they keep on working. But do they ever get there? The Quran describes this in a beautiful way when Allah Ta'ala talks about, He addresses Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi as a way of addressing all of us. Just say salawat, please. Allah tells Rasulullah, He says, وَلَا تَمُدَّنَّ عَيْنَيْكَ إِلَى مَا مَتَّعْنَا بِهِ أَزْوَاجًا مِّنْهُمْ زَهْرَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا لِنَفْتِنَهُمْ فِيهِ وَرِزْقُ رَبِّكَ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. Allah speaks to the Prophet as a message for all of us. He says, do not extend your eyes, meaning that there are sometimes when we look at something and we look at it in a way where we're lusting after it. We're admiring it to the point where we're saying that this is the object of the desire of my heart. Don't look at what has been given to other groups of people, the Prophet is told. And don't prolong your gaze on what they have. Because what they have is Zahrat al-Hayat al-Dunya, and it is there in order to test them. Now, Zahra is a very interesting word. Zahrat al-Hayat al-Dunya means the flower buds of the lowly life. You know, when, if you ever go out in the springtime, I don't know so much about cold climates like here, but definitely in warmer climates, when you go out in the springtime, you see that the trees begin to become revived. Before, the branches were empty, and now there's a flower bud that appears. This is called a zahra. And it's often very beautiful, and it's very sweet smelling. And sometimes people will travel for many, many distances in order to see the most beautiful flowers that flower from the trees. But brothers and sisters, there's something that's mentioned here which is very important. That in the course of generating flowers, trees are useful to human beings when they don't just stop at the flowering stage. I don't know if you're aware, but every single fruit that we eat, it grows from a tree. Oftentimes we just go to the grocery store, we pick it up from the shelf. But if you look and try to examine where it comes from, every fruit that we eat, it comes from a tree. Before the fruit grows from the tree, what precedes it is the flowering bud. The bud appears in a very beautiful color. Sometimes it has a beautiful smell. But that's one stage of the development of that fruit. It then goes and develops more, and eventually that flower turns into a fruit. Now you ask yourself this question. When is it truly the case that that tree is useful to a human being? Let's say that it were to just stop at that stage of producing that flower bud. How much utility does it have at that time? Yeah, it can be attractive. Yes, it can give off sweet smell. But in terms of taking care of the fundamental needs of a human being, which is to eat and to survive, that tree which produces flowers that don't turn into fruits has zero utility. So Ayatul Jawadi Amuni, he says that in this expression, Allah is telling us the true nature of the dunya in and of itself. Meaning that if somebody is hungering after the material world and what it offers, the most it can offer is zahra, meaning that flowering bud. But is that what you're looking for? Imagine somebody, has a tree which is meant to, let's say, produce beautiful fruit, mangoes, or let's say passion fruit. But they're trying to grow it in the GTA, where of course the climate is not conducive for that. But they're very excited about it, so they plant that tree. And they begin to water it, and they wait in anticipation. They water it more, they wait in anticipation. And finally, the day comes in the springtime where it spouts a bud. And everyone's excited. Oh, yes, our tree sprouted a bud. And they keep on putting water. They keep on putting water and time and effort and care. And the most that it produces the whole season is that flower bud. Everyone will be disappointed. This is the nature of the material world that the Quran is giving us. And the false hope that can be generated is that this is something that I need to strive for above all. This is the most important thing for me to achieve. One of the things that we are told, brothers and sisters, is that you are worthless unless and until you achieve some set of worldly goals and standards that have been defined by others. This is something which is echoed from many different ways. We go on social media, we go and check, for example, LinkedIn, and what's the very natural thing for people to do is to start comparing themselves to, for example, their classmates, to their cousins, to their friends, community members. And they see that that person has a list of so many accomplishments, so many certifications, so much experience. And they start to have this negative feeling develop in themselves. I am worthless. Why? Because I have not achieved what they have achieved. You see sometimes parents, in the way that they parent their children, they want the best for their children, of course. But when it comes to what is emphasized above all, sometimes it's encapsulated in nothing but al-hayatud dunya. You must achieve this particular career and this particular income figure and this type of property acquisition before you gain respect in my eyes. Before that, you're worthless. Now, of course, one of the jobs of the parents is to teach their children, good habits, the importance of working hard, not postponing what's important, not leaving today's work till tomorrow, of maximizing those God-given abilities that they have within them, and of earning risk from Allah according to the system that He has defined. But that doesn't mean that they now have the right to sometimes introduce extreme pressure on their children and define a certain notion of success which is very much materialistic focused and doesn't have anything beyond the material world. This is dangerous. Sometimes, youth are crying and complaining and they're saying that there's so much pressure on me, I feel like I'm a loser because I just can't be good enough to please my parents. Sometimes spouses put that same pressure on one another. They say, you're no good unless you give me the material worth of what my friend has, or what my sister has, or what my cousin has, or my brother, or whatever it may be. Because for them, that's how success has been defined in terms of materialistic acquisition. Brothers and sisters, I want to ask us to just reflect for a moment here. In these nights, I think that above all, when we have these reminders, these are not new things that it's not like that nobody has ever said this before from this member. But one thing that when we come to these and we hear the reminders is that we have an opportunity to reflect and to ask ourselves, where am I and what am I striving for? Let's take a walk again outside and let's just ponder for a moment here. Here I am and I look into the sky and I see the sun. And I see it in its, resplendent light that's coming from it. It's so amazing, so useful for me. And I ask myself that how small am I compared to the sun? The sun is about 1,000 times bigger in its radius and diameter than the earth. And if you wanted to fit the earth into the sun, you could fit 1.3 million earths into the sun. Meaning that not only am I tiny compared to the earth in its entirety is tiny compared to the sun. And then you zoom out and you ask yourself, well, what about the earth compared to the entire known visible universe? And it gets to be a ratio of like 1 times 10 to the power of, I believe, 59 in terms of the size of the earth and the size of the visible universe. In terms of time, we ask ourselves that how long is a typical lifespan in this earth? 75 years, maybe 80 years, maybe 90 years. May Allah give you all a long life in service of Him and the Ahlul Bayt and the Quran. If you take what they estimate to be the lifespan of the universe, they say that if you compare the lifespan of a human being, the earth and the universe as a whole is 200 million times older than the typical lifespan of a human being. 200 million times older than what a human being lives. And now we ask ourselves this question that, what is my purpose? What am I here for? If I've been given such little life in this world compared to the whole life of the universe, if I have been given such small size compared to the entirety of the universe, then what does that mean? It very clearly tells me that my purpose can never be to acquire as much as I can of this world in this short time that I have. Because anyone who created that universe with all of its vastness and gave me such a small portion of it and put inside of me that desire to gain and to excel and to achieve perfection, He would know that with these limitations, there's no way I can ever meet that desire within me. So what that tells me is that the desire within me to achieve and to acquire has to be placed in something other than the dunya. And that's where we have to redefine success. Success can never be tied to materialistic measures. I am not worthy because of my degrees and accomplishments. I'm not worthy simply because I've been able to break into certain corporate ranks or academic ranks or things that people of the dunya value. I am worthy because of the way I have been created. And I'm worthy because of the taqwa that I have been able to acquire. There's a story that we've all heard before, but it's worth pondering upon. There was one time when our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was sitting with a man who was very wealthy, somebody who from the dunya standards, he had made it. And he was wearing really nice clothes, and he was really keen on learning from the Prophet. He wasn't somebody who was like a rebel. He was sitting with the Prophet, he was learning from him. And then somebody comes and sits next to him in the mosque of the Prophet, and that person is dressed in, kind of tattered clothing. And he's visibly from the poor class. So the rich man, he gathers his cloak and kind of like puts it underneath himself like this. And the Prophet notices this. Remember, the Prophet is the teacher. He's a guide. He wants to take this man to the next level. He asks them, why did you do this thing right here of putting your clothes like that? Did you fear that his dirtiness of his clothes would come and affect the cleanliness of your clothes? The rich man says, no. Okay. And the Prophet takes it to a higher level. Do you fear that the poverty of this man would somehow come and afflict you and you would become poor? Right? These are the things that the dunya plays with us, these tricks, where it defines people in these type of false labels. What does that mean? Right? Of course, he said, no, I'm not fearing of that. Do you think that somehow your richness will transfer to him and you're going to lose what you have? That's what the Prophet asks him. He says, no. So he said, why did you do that? And this man thinks for a bit. And he says that, Ya Rasulullah, I have a shaitan. And that shaitan whispers to me and tells me to do these types of things. It's very brave of that man to admit that. I think maybe if it was me and I was in the company of the Prophet, I would have come up with some sort of excuse. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, But this man was able to admit it. He was able to reflect and see that he had taken a path, and this path had gotten to this point. This simple gesture was something that opened up a different perspective on what he had become. So the rich man says that, Ya Rasulullah, I would like to give half of my wealth to this poor man. And Rasulullah turns to the poor man and says that, will you accept? And the man thinks for a moment, and he says that, I will not accept it. So the rich man asks the poor man, he says that, why aren't you accepting it? I really want to give it to you. It's sincere. Take it from me. The poor man says that, because if I take it from you, I fear that I will become like you. Look at what the standard is, brothers and sisters. At the time of the Prophet, he had trained his students to understand that there's a standard for excellence and success which goes beyond the worldly measures. The poor man understood that, and now the rich man had come to understand that as well. On a practical level, brothers and sisters, this can affect us very much in many things that we do. Sometimes, let's say that there's a young person who's looking to get married, and they put their criteria down. Of course, it's important to be realistic, to be practical, but sometimes the criteria are so up in the sky, and it's like, well, what is it that you really want? Why is it that you made all these conditions and stipulations that they have to have this and this and this? At the end of the day, in the akhirah, will this be something that somehow is a source of salvation for you? When it comes to parenting and the way that we inculcate success and notions of success with our children, and when it comes to the dunya and the way that we approach it, I will end with a hadith I found. It was very eye-opening, very beautiful. It's a hadith from our Prophet, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The hadith says that our Prophet, لا ينظر إلى ما يستحسن من الدنيا. The Prophet would never gaze at that which he found to be beautiful from the dunya. No, we have to make sure we understand this. Obviously, there are times when gazing at what we find beautiful is an act of ibadah. For example, to look at our children with love, to look at our spouses with love is something which is very important. To look at our fellow brother or sister in iman with love is very important. But when there would be something from the dunya where the Prophet might fear that love of that would enter into his heart and take away from the love of Allah, he wouldn't extend his glance at it. This is a type of philosophy when it comes to the dunya. Make use of it. Acquire it according to the means that Allah has given us. Use it for good. Don't become attached to it. And do not set your worth based on worldly accomplishments. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Please recite salawat. Tonight, brothers and sisters, it's the 9th night of Muhurram. In this night, we commemorate one of the greatest and a very heavy and weighty story of the musibah of Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam was not an ordinary companion, nor was he an ordinary family member. Hazrat Abbas was the alamdar. He was the flag bearer. On the day of Ashura, Imam Hussein alayhi salam gave him the flag. The flag bearer was the one who could not be deterred. He could not be scattered by the army because of his strength. Because the flag is the rallying point. While the flag is up, the army is intact. But if the flag were to fall down, then the army is dispersed. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam was the saqi. He was the one who the children would look to when they were thirsty. Because they knew that Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam was very generous. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam was Qamaru Bani Hashim. He was exceedingly beautiful, exceedingly strong, and a very good warrior. And when Imam Sajjad alayhi salam says about Hazrat Abbas, he says, Rahimallahu al-Abbas. May Allah have mercy on Abbas. He has a position. On the day of judgment, all of the shuhada will envy the position of my uncle Abbas alayhi salam. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله صلى الله عليك يا ابن رسول الله صلى الله عليك أيها الشهيد المقتول بكربلاء عطشانا صلى الله عليك وعلى أخيك العباس. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon the master of martyrs, Imam Hussein, and upon his brother Abbas ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. On the day of Ashura, we know that one companion after the other, they came to Imam Hussein seeking permission to go to the battlefield. But there was a time when Habib and Muslim and Burayr and the other companions had all been martyred. The family members, one after the other, they seek permission from Imam Hussein alayhi salam to go to the battlefield. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam's heart has become constricted. He is dying to be able to seek revenge from the enemy. He wants to go and fight them. But he knows his position with Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He knows that he was the one who was chosen to bear the flag on the day of Ashura. He knows that if he were to go, this would be a big blow to Hussein alayhi salam. So he holds himself back until the time that the likes of Ali Akbar and Qasim have become martyred. Finally, Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam comes to Imam Hussein. He asks him, "Oh my brother, will you give me permission to go to the battlefield?" Imam Hussein alayhi salam tells him, "Oh my brother, Anta sahibu liwa'i, you are the one who bears my flag. إِذَا مَضَيْتَ تَفَرَّقَ عَسْكَرِي. If you were to leave, if you were to depart, my army would be no longer. You are my army." Hazrat Abbas, he is saying to him. But then Abbas alayhi salam, he sees that insistence in him. He says, "If you have to go, Abbas, then my mission for you, go and bring some water for these children, they are thirsty." Abbas alayhi salam has a mission from his Imam. He needs to get some water, but there is a problem. There is 4,000 men who are guarding the banks of that river. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam takes the water skin, he takes his sword, he gets on his horse, he starts to charge the enemy army. He first asks them, "Will you give me some water? After all, don't you see that the companions have been martyred? The only people who are left are the women and the children. Let me get some water for them." They say that no, even if the entire earth were to be covered with water, we would not give you even a drop from it. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam realizes that he will have to go and make his way to the river. I don't know how he did it, but somehow he is able to fight his way to the river. The men around him are fleeing. This is the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He makes his way to the river. He charges forward in the river with his horse. There's an opportunity here for him to quench his own thirst. But they say that when he looked at this opportunity, he said that how is it that I can drink from the water of this river when Hussein and his family are thirsty? He puts the water back in the river. Abbas alayhi salam has a mission. He has to get the water back to the enemy army. But when we're fighting an army, you should never turn your back to the soldiers. But here he has to turn his back to them because he has to make his way back to the camp of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He is making his way, but suddenly he is ambushed. The strike comes, he cries out, "Wallahi in qata'tum yamini, fa inni uhami abadan an dini, wa ana imamin sadiq al-yaqini, najni al-nabi sadiq al-amini." If you cut off my right arm, I will never give up defending my brother, the one who is the righteous one, the one who is from the family of the Prophet, the righteous Prophet. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam has his mission. He switches the water to his left hand. He charges forward and he goes towards the ranks. He goes toward the tents. It's said that somebody said, Umar ibn Sa'd, one of the narrations says, Umar ibn Sa'd says that stop him from getting to the tents. I fear that if they get water, we will not be able to overcome Hussein. So the enemy begins to surround him from every angle. One of them strikes him. It strikes him on his left arm. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam is on his horse, but he has no arms. What does he do at this point? They say that he moved the water bag to his teeth, but he will not give up his mission. At this point, there is a man who is hiding behind a tree. He has a type of club, an iron club is in his hands. He approaches the horse of Abbas alayhi salam. Later on, they say that when al-Banin was told about what happened, she composes some poetry and she asks this question. She says, "Oh Abbas, is it true? Is it true that a man was able to attack you with an iron club and that he hit you? Oh Abbas, it must have been the case that you did not have hands with you at that time, because never would anyone be able to hit you if you had hands to defend yourself." But this man comes and he hits Abbas alayhi salam with the iron staff. Abbas alayhi salam falls from the horse. Brothers and sisters, he has no hands, but he falls from the horse. He cries out, "Oh Aba Abdullah, alayka minni salam, my peace be to you." Imam Hussein alayhi salam comes rushing towards the scene, towards the place where Abbas alayhi salam has fallen. I don't know what he saw at that time. I don't know how he could have bared what he had seen. He cries out, "Al-an inkasara dhahri wa qallat hilati." Now my backbone has been broken. I have no recourse after the martyrdom of Abbas alayhi salam. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimin wa say'alamu alladhina zalamu wa ayyaman qadabin yanqalibun. Mata Hussein.